The camera lights hit hard in the Fox News studio, but the tension between the two men burned brighter. Barron Trump adjusted his blazer with a smirk that had the arrogance of wealth, dynasty, and destiny stitched into every thread. He wasn't the president. He wasn't even elected. But tonight, he was chosen by the network to represent America's future. Across from him sat Ibrahim Traoré, calm, still, unreadable. The man had walked through civil wars and coups without flinching. He had no script, no teleprompter, and no patience for pretense. The moderator introduced the segment, Two Young Voices. Two Visions of the World. But even she could feel this wasn't just about policy. This was bloodline versus battle-hardened belief. One had inherited a legacy. The other had fought for one. Barron opened with a tone that mixed sarcasm with showmanship. So let's get this straight. You come from a place where power changes hands through rifles, not ballots, and now you want to lecture us on leadership? The audience chuckled, nervous, unsure of whether it was supposed to be funny or dangerous. Traoré didn't blink. Power without purpose is just performance, he said, voice low but steady. Barron leaned forward, eager for applause. You're just military, he mocked, drawing out the words like a taunt. A man in a uniform pretending to understand diplomacy. The camera zoomed in on Traoré's face. No change. No anger. Just silence thick enough to make the moderator shift uncomfortably. Then Traoré spoke, eyes locked on Barron. And you, he said, you're just privileged. The words landed like a stone in still water. No music. No laugh track. Just breathless quiet. He continued, you were born with a last name that opens doors. I was born in a land where doors were locked with chains. You carry legacy like a crown. I carry scars like a map. Barron's smile faltered for the first time. Traoré leaned in slightly. Leadership isn't inherited. It's earned. Sometimes in silence. Sometimes in struggle. But never in comfort. The moderator cleared her throat and cut to commercial. But it was too late. The tone was set. Two men. Two empires. One confrontation that had only just begun. The studio's green room was supposed to be a place for water, makeup, and mild conversation. Instead, it felt like the inside of a political earthquake. As producers scrambled to rearrange talking points and advertisers called in nervous concern, Barron Trump paced the hallway like a man who'd just lost control of his own spotlight. His entourage followed close behind, stylists, PR managers, and a former White House aide who looked like he wanted to melt into the carpet. What was that? Barron hissed under his breath. He wasn't supposed to talk like that. He was supposed to. I don't know, play the part. The aide cleared his throat. Sir, with all due respect. Traoré doesn't play parts. Barron's jaw clenched. Then what the hell is he doing on American television? Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the building, Ibrahim Traoré sat alone, sipping a cup of water. He wasn't on edge. He wasn't angry. He was simply calculating. A soldier's mind in a civilian's body. For him, words were ammunition, and tonight he'd fired the first shot. An intern approached him hesitantly. Mr. Traoré, your presence, it caused quite a stir. Just letting you know. Traoré nodded politely. Good. The intern blinked. Good. If truth doesn't stir people, he said, then it's not truth. It's theater. Outside, the internet had erupted. Clips of Traoré's calm takedown were already trending. Headlines read like battle reports. Traoré silences Barron Trump on live TV. Privilege meets resistance. Africa speaks, America blinks. Back at the Trump family residence, the reaction wasn't mild. Melania watched with arms crossed, shaking her head slowly. He's not ready for this, she whispered. Donald Trump, watching the replay from Mar-a-Lago, slammed the remote down. You let a soldier embarrass you? That wasn't just a debate, Barron. That was a war of symbols. And you looked like a boy in a man's game. Barron didn't respond. But something changed behind his eyes. Something hard. Something proud. Something dangerous. He wasn't going to take this lying down. And Traoré knew it. This wasn't a one-night debate anymore. It was becoming a slow-burning fire between two legacies, one inherited, the other built by will. The next morning, Barron Trump emerged with a carefully scripted video, seated on a sleek leather chair, an American flag just out of focus behind him. It was polished, but forced. His team had crafted every word to repair the damage. This nation was built on leadership, not rebellion, he declared. Respect is earned through structure, through legacy, not through shock value or soundbites. But the internet wasn't buying it. Comments poured in like wildfire. Is he talking about himself or Traoré? Legacy? He was born into a golden elevator. We watched him get humbled, live. Meanwhile, Ibrahim Traoré had already left New York. He wasn't interested in public relations battles. He'd returned to Ouagadougou, where cameras didn't choreograph his image, people did. On the dusty grounds of a rural community center, Traoré met with farmers and students. No suits. No limelight. Just raw trust. A young woman approached him with a worn notebook. President Traoré, was that really Barron Trump? Traoré smiled gently. Yes. He's young. But he represents something old. She tilted her head. Like? Entitlement. Inheritance. The kind of leadership that forgets to listen. Meanwhile, in Washington, political commentators were beginning to circle. A segment aired on national news. This isn't about one moment, the anchor said. It's about what Traoré symbolizes. A leader who doesn't seek applause, and a generation tired of empty crowns. Even Barack Obama was asked off camera what he thought of the moment. His response was measured. That young man Traoré, he reminds me of something I used to believe, that power should rise, not be passed down like heirlooms. For Barron, the sting deepened. He wasn't just being mocked anymore, he was being studied, dissected, and quietly dismissed by the very establishment that once cheered his name. That night, he met with advisors behind closed doors. This isn't about Traoré anymore, Barron growled. It's about principle. If we let this narrative grow, that inheritance is weakness, we lose control. Then what do you suggest? Someone asked. He leaned forward, eyes colder than usual. We show him what control looks like. But Traoré? He had no intention of playing defense. 2 days later, Ibrahim Traoré walked onto a modest stage in Dakar, Senegal. The crowd was buzzing, students, journalists, ministers, farmers. No teleprompter. No bodyguards shielding him like glass. Just one mic and a storm building behind his steady voice. I was told I'm just a soldier, he began, his eyes scanning the front row. But I know something about soldiers, they serve. A pause. And too often, those born into privilege forget what service means. It was no longer just about Barron Trump. The room knew it. The world knew it. This had become a referendum on systems, on entitlement, on dynasty, on leadership earned versus inherited. Back in New York, Barron's team scrambled. Every attempt to counter Traoré only gave him more oxygen. One aide warned, "Sir, every time you respond, it boosts his credibility. He's not just clapping back, he's rewriting the argument." Barron wasn't interested in retreat. "Fine," he said. "Then we don't respond with words." He had allies, powerful ones. Through discreet back channels, efforts began to quietly undermine Traoré's credibility. Leaked intelligence reports, whispers of instability in Burkina Faso, claims of authoritarian tendencies. But none of it stuck. Traoré had something his enemies didn't: visible change. Rice harvests had tripled in rural provinces. Education programs had brought internet access to villages that had once relied on firewood. He didn't need to defend himself. The people did it for him. A CNN analyst said it best. Traoré's strength isn't just his rhetoric, it's that he speaks last. While others posture, he delivers. Meanwhile, a viral video showed Traoré at a rural school, kneeling to fix a child's broken sandal with twine. It spread across platforms with one caption: "Who's the real leader now?" That image, raw, simple, unscripted, hit harder than any televised retort. And Barron knew it. He stared at the screen in silence. Then he whispered, "He's not fighting me. He's replacing me." The pressure was rising. Not just in Washington, but inside Barron Trump himself. He wasn't used to this kind of resistance. Mockery, yes. Internet memes, definitely. But not a rival who refused to play the same game. Not a man who smiled at insult and answered it with results. One night, Barron stood in front of a camera crew. No teleprompter, no lights, just a phone recording for social media. "If being born into success makes me privileged," he said, "then maybe privilege is the reason this world works." He smiled. And if Traoré hates that, maybe he should stop pretending to be a hero and admit he just wants attention. The clip exploded online. Some cheered. Others called it tone-deaf. But it reached its target. And Traoré? He didn't film a reply. He didn't post a caption. He simply invited journalists to follow him on his next trip, to a rural refugee camp on the edge of Burkina Faso, housing thousands displaced by conflict. There, he sat on the dirt floor with elders, drank from a tin cup, and explained solar water filtration to children who'd never seen clean water before. The footage wasn't flashy. But it moved people. While Barron debated optics, Traoré was building something undeniable. And still, Barron couldn't look away. That night, watching the refugee camp footage, he muttered, "Why does it feel like he's everywhere?" His advisor leaned in. "Because he's not aiming at you. He's aiming through you." Back in Africa, Traoré stood with a journalist under the sunset. When asked if he planned to respond to Barron's latest remarks, he simply said, "I don't build for applause. I build for after the noise fades." The reporter blinked. "You're not angry?" "I have no time to be angry," Traoré replied. "My people don't eat anger. They eat rice. They drink clean water. They need schools. Anger doesn't build those." That line, "anger doesn't build," made headlines worldwide. Meanwhile, Barron began to fade from the narrative, not because Traoré silenced him, but because the world simply stopped listening. One man was born into power. The other was becoming it. 3 weeks later, the stage was set for an international youth forum in Berlin. Leaders, activists, and young influencers from around the world gathered under one roof, broadcast live to millions. The organizers had invited Ibrahim Traoré to speak. Unexpectedly, Barron Trump requested to be added to the panel. The topic: redefining global leadership. Cameras clicked as the two figures arrived, Barron in an expensive, tailored navy suit, Traoré in a plain, cream-colored Sahel tunic, his sleeves rolled just slightly above his wrists. The crowd buzzed. They'd come expecting fireworks. They got something else entirely. The moderator introduced Barron first. "Mr. Trump, what defines leadership in your view?" Barron's smirk returned. "Influence. Control. The ability to shape outcomes without raising your voice. Or your fists." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Then the moderator turned to Traoré. "And you, President Traoré? Traoré's voice remained steady. Leadership is not about control. It's about service. If your power does not make others stronger, then it is decoration, not leadership. Gasps. And silence. Barron crossed his legs and leaned forward. You talk about service. Yet you took power with a military force. And what have you done with your name? Traoré asked gently. Inherited cameras and headlines. I inherited nothing but hunger. I do not apologize for surviving it. The air tightened. Barron's face flickered. He hadn't expected the blow to land that softly, and that hard. You romanticize struggle, Barron replied. But the world runs on strategy, not suffering. Traoré nodded. Then strategize to feel hunger. Strategize to be unseen. Because that's the world most people live in, and they don't need lectures. They need roads, they need seeds, and they need someone to stay when the applause stops. The applause now started. Not loud. But building. Barron adjusted his cuff. You still think you can beat the system? I don't need to beat it, Traoré replied. I need to outlive it. And for the first time, Barron didn't speak. The cameras caught his silence. The headlines framed it as loss. Traoré didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just looked to the crowd, to the youth watching from home, and said quietly. You do not need permission to lead. And the world listened. The clip of Traoré's closing line, you do not need permission to lead, went viral within hours. But it wasn't just the words that captivated people. It was the way Barron Trump had fallen quiet, blinking, lips pressed into a straight line, clearly searching for a comeback that never came. American media split down familiar lines. Conservative outlets dismissed the forum as theater and called Traoré's performance scripted humility. But younger viewers, and particularly those outside the West, saw something else entirely. They saw a man who didn't need validation from wealth or legacy. A man who had built authority without asking for applause. Barron, meanwhile, was reeling. Inside the hotel suite later that evening, he threw off his jacket and collapsed into the leather couch, frustrated. He ambushed me, he snapped at his media advisor. No, sir, the advisor said carefully. He didn't. He just didn't play your game. Barron clenched his jaw. Then I'll change the game. He began planning a rebuttal, a media campaign painting Traoré as another populist, using sentiment to manipulate the naive. But something strange happened. It didn't stick. Even audiences skeptical of Traoré began recognizing that his words weren't just rhetoric. Footage from Burkina Faso showed real programs in motion, local agricultural cooperatives thriving, schools being built with solar panels, and community clinics staffed with young nurses trained under his own national initiatives. For the first time, critics couldn't just accuse Traoré of performance. His results were speaking. And more unsettling for Barron, so were his followers. Across social platforms, thousands of young people began using hashtags like #LeadWithoutApplause and #TraoréWay, not to idolize a man, but to challenge a system. One post read, I'm not African. I'm not poor. But I'm done chasing applause. I just want to build something real. It hit Barron harder than Traoré's calm words ever had. Because it wasn't just about losing a debate anymore. It was about losing a generation. And they weren't looking to names for answers anymore. They were looking to grit. In Washington, a closed-door panel at a think tank convened to address what they were now calling the Traoré effect. A veteran strategist tapped the screen showing clips of the Berlin Forum, community videos from West Africa, and online reactions across continents. This isn't about Traoré, she said flatly. It's about exposure. The system we built forgot to hide the mirror. And now everyone sees who actually sweats, and who only signs. Across the ocean, Barron Trump sat alone at a rooftop lounge in Manhattan. The lights of the city blurred beneath him. But his thoughts were sharp. He opened a tablet and replayed Traoré's Berlin moment, again. And again. Not because he didn't know what was said. But because he couldn't figure out why it landed so hard. Was it the tone? The restraint? No. It was that Traoré never looked like he needed the moment. He owned nothing, yet seemed to lose nothing. He wasn't posturing. He believed. Barron realized then, Traoré wasn't interested in being understood by the elite. He was speaking to someone else entirely. The builder. The mother. The boy born far from microphones. And slowly, Barron's own reflection became harder to look at. At the same time, a letter from a high school student in Arkansas began circulating online. It was addressed to Traoré but spoke volumes about the times. I've never heard a politician speak without asking for something. You didn't ask. You just stood. I don't agree with everything, but I believe you mean it. And I've never believed that before. Traoré read the letter during a quiet evening in Ouagadougou. He folded it, placed it in his coat pocket, and said nothing. He didn't tweet it. He didn't film a reaction. Because he understood, the real battle wasn't about winning the internet. It was about showing up long after the hashtags died. Meanwhile, Barron's world of commentary, headlines, and soundbites suddenly felt quiet. Too quiet. Because when the applause faded, all that remained was the question. What have you built? And Barron had no answer. Barron Trump wasn't used to being ignored. His last interview, meant to reframe the narrative, barely made it to the front page of political blogs. The comments under his speech were worse, brutally honest and, perhaps for the first time, accurate. You inherited a podium, one read. He built a platform. And then came the unexpected twist. A televised town hall was being organized in Nairobi, an international forum focused on post-colonial development and youth leadership. To everyone's shock, Traoré extended a formal invitation to Barron. No handlers. No pre-approved questions. Just a stage. Barron's advisors warned him. You walk into that room, and you're in his house. But Barron said yes. When he arrived, the contrast was immediate. Traoré didn't wear a suit. He wore the same local woven tunic he'd worn at the refugee camp. No polished shoes. No Rolex. Just worn sandals, cracked hands, and a quiet confidence. Barron, in a charcoal suit, looked like a banker trying to sell air. The moderator wasted no time. President Traoré, what compelled you to invite Mr. Trump here? Traoré didn't look at Barron. He looked at the audience. Because we cannot challenge the world order, he said, by only speaking to the ones who agree with us. Barron shifted slightly in his seat. The moderator turned to him. Mr. Trump, how do you respond to critiques that say your name opened doors you never had to build? Barron took a breath. This isn't about my name, he began. It's about responsibility. I'm here because I still believe I can lead. Traoré finally looked at him. Then start, he said. But not by leading the noise. Lead the silence. Lead the work. The crowd was quiet, expecting mockery. Instead, they saw something rarer. Recognition. Barron blinked, caught off guard. I didn't come here to be taught, he said slowly. Traoré nodded. No one asked you to be. That line, soft, composed, final, hit the way only truth can. Barron didn't fight back. And for the first time, his silence wasn't humiliation. It was growth. The final moments of the Nairobi Forum weren't explosive. They were quiet, almost too quiet for a world addicted to outrage. As the panel ended, Traoré stood up first. He didn't gesture grandly or wait for the cameras. He simply turned to Barron, extended his hand, and said, "The floor is yours." For a moment, Barron didn't move. Then, he stood. Not as a Trump. Not as a headline. Just as a man. He shook Traoré's hand. Not for optics. But because something had shifted. And the audience felt it. There was no thunderous applause. Just a long, rising silence. The kind of silence that follows when people realize they've witnessed something real. Later, as reporters scrambled to frame the moment, some calling it a truce, others a surrender, Traoré walked alone through the edge of the venue, where local students gathered near the gates. A boy with worn shoes approached him. "Are you really the president?" he asked. Traoré crouched down, smiled. "Only until you're ready to take over." Back in his hotel room, Barron opened his phone, but this time, not to check reactions. He opened a blank note. And he wrote. "Privilege taught me how to speak. But struggle taught him why." He never published it. He didn't need to. The moment had already outgrown him. And the story didn't belong to the crown, the name, or the power anymore. It belonged to those building in silence. To those leading without applause. To those like Ibrahim Traoré.